Welcome to Veterans Archives, where we preserve the stories of our nation's heroes in their own words and their own voices.
Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, January 16th, 2025. We're speaking with Jeffrey Alpert, who served in the United States Army. So good afternoon, Jeff.
Good afternoon, Bill. How are you?
Great. How about yourself?
Not bad for a Thursday, thank you.
There you go. So we're going to start out pretty simple, I think. When and where were you born?
I'm sorry?
When and where were you born?
I was born on June 4th, 1948 in Hollywood, California.
Okay. Is that where I'm not going to disclose your email address, but is that where your address comes from? Your email address?
Yes.
Okay.
You'll notice that there's a G instead of a J because the address version with the J was already taken.
Oh, I got you. So how long did you live in Hollywood, California?
It was my home of record for my whole life until maybe 2012.
Okay. And so talk to us a little bit about what it was like growing up, little Jeff Alpert in Hollywood, California. What are some of your first memories of being a kid?
Some of my earliest memories of being a kid were my mother's fixation with movies and movie stars. And we lived not too far from a tourist area in Los Angeles called the Farmers Market. It was a one of these like exclusive fresh produce truck farm markets, the only one you would find in that part of the city. And so we would constantly see celebrities every Saturday morning when we went to the market, and she'd jab me in the ribs and say, "That's so and so, that's so and so, that's Lana Turner, that's Leonard Nimoy, yeah, blah blah blah." And I'm a little kid going, "Okay, mom, cool, mom, yeah, okay. Can we go home now so I can play with my army toys?" That was kind of it.
So you weren't really into the celebrities, but your mom was.
Not at all. Although that will change later in my life, as I hope I remember to share with you.
Okay. Well, let's make sure that we do talk about that. So did you have brothers and sisters?
I had a brother. He was a
Uh-huh.
year younger. Uh, his name was Dennis. He was a lot larger than me. Did I just lose the camera?
No, I can see you fine.
Okay. Um, I lost you.
Oh, you can't. Can you see me or hear me?
Hold on. There you are. Okay. I won't
All
touch
right.
anything again, I promise.
Okay. Good deal.
Okay.
So you had a
Uh,
brother, Dennis.
yes. And he was complete opposite me. I was kind of dark haired and kind of natural height. He was from babyhood. He was more chunkier and taller.
Uh-huh.
And as we became adults, he would be about 6'2", 6'3", and maybe weigh 240. And I would come out to about 5'8" and weigh 160.
Uh-huh. And
So
how did you guys get along?
not well.
Oh,
And the reason for that is the stars, I'm afraid. My brother was a first deacon Cancer, a moon child. I
okay.
was a second deacon Gemini. Geminis and Cancers are like this. And lo and behold, that was our relationship. We would fight at the drop of a hanky, at the sound of a word, at a shared look. It usually ended up with us tickling each other into laughing sprees, losing, not being able to breathe, laughing so hard. But
Right.
it's like a cat walking into a room with a dog.
So are these good memories though? I mean,
Oh, yes, there's
okay.
lots of good memories. Uh, in the late 50s and early 60s, there were some TV shows on, kind of militaristic shows. One of them was called Mosby's Raiders. You're probably not old enough to remember. But it was a TV show about a Confederate cavalry unit that snuck around the Union lines and caused the Union supply lines grief, took prisoners, blah, blah, blah. Typical Western drama set in the Civil War. Well, I became fixated on that. And I made my mom and dad go buy me a gray uniform made out of Dickie work clothes.
Uh-huh.
Made my brother go get a gray uniform made out of Dickie work clothes. And somehow we managed to get sabers and fake muskets and hats and feathers. And we would play Civil War, and I would slay him in the first 2 minutes of every battle. So he became frustrated at this, and he developed different interests. He began to be more interested in cars and motorcycles and girls. And I just kept my interest in military and military history.
Okay. So how did this
He
go for you?
was murdered. I'm sorry. He was
Oh,
murdered in 1982.
oh,
He was at that point in his life, had a lucrative income, and he lived in the hills above Hollywood. And he went to purchase drugs for a typical 80s party.
mhm.
Only, he went to get recreational drugs, but he attempted to buy them from a non-recreational drug dealer. They got into an argument. My brother claimed he had a gun, turned to a chest of drawers, and that's just all the headway this dealer was going to give him, and took out a hunting knife and put it between his shoulder blades.
I guess so. Did they caught the person that did this?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
He got 2 years.
Wow.
There were a couple of girls in the room, money honeys, if you know what I mean, who ended up with the choice of testifying as to what happened over a dead guy, or testify what happened with the killer alive and free.
Mhm.
So they basically told the killer's story.
I
And he
see.
got 2 years for aggravated manslaughter and probation for blah blah.
Wow. 80s were kind of a crazy time, especially for drugs and cocaine and things like that,
Yeah, they were.
for sure. So let's back up a little bit, back to your childhood there. What was school like for you?
I was a mediocre student, except in the classes I enjoyed. I would get A's and B's in English and history, or social studies, as they called it. I would get D's and F in math, science, chemistry, PE, anything that I was not interested in. I just didn't pay any attention to.
Mhm.
And
You
my
played.
mother thought there was something wrong with me. So she had me and my brother and I, had our IQs tested. I think that's what they called it then. And they found out that no, that wasn't the problem. Nothing wrong with the brains. So uh, that's pretty much my track record all the way through high school.
Okay. Now, did you play any sports or any of that in school?
No, in high school, I played one season with the baseball team. I was a relief pitcher. I think I played in 3 games out of the season. I faced maybe 4 batters. I think I did well. I don't remember. I was too nervous. But then for the rest of high school, I was in the JROTC, a little soldier in the making.
So
I
so you
rose
turned
to,
in your gray uniform for a green one.
that's right,
Yeah.
that's right. And I ended up being the battalion commander, which is high as you can go in JROTC in my high school. And I commanded the drill team and the honor guard and the blah, blah, blah. Not bad for a goofy little kid with glasses.
No, that's very true. Now, we talked about your mom a little bit. What about your dad?
My dad was preoccupied with work and his business. He was a salesman. Uh, he sold restaurant supplies to all the restaurants in town from a local company. And he would leave before we got up in the morning and come back for dinner and go immediately do his book work, what we call daddy's homework.
Uh-huh.
So 5 days a week, I never saw him.
Okay.
And on the weekends, uh, he'd like he'd take us to the YMCA and try and get us interested in something. But neither my brother nor I had any particular interest in swimming or badminton or volleyball or whatever else they had there. Although my brother was good at what he tried, he had no interest in it either. So my dad stopped taking us to the YMCA and started taking us to a enlightened mind organization called the Science of Mind. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am not. Tell me a little bit about that.
The Science of Mind was a semi-religious uh, a semi-religious group of people who specialized in finding the goodness of life, the positivity of life. And I don't know if they went on to merge with some other of these groups, but there were a lot of these fringe groups: Science of Mind, Scientologists, um, uh, some of the quasi-religious groups that were kind of cult-like. But he started dragging us to these things, and these were cool because all we had to do is sit there and listen for an hour to these guys tell some pretty interesting stories about their lives and
Really?
how adopting the science of mind helped them. And I believe you would call this uh, agnostic.
So
So
it
my
wasn't about any
father,
sort of religion. It was more of a
no.
okay.
The literature had a cross on it, but
Uh-huh.
that's the only time in years I ever heard them preach anything about Christianity, knew anything that was related to Christianity with them. What they
Uh-huh.
did and what they professed to be, not exactly the same thing. My father
Yeah.
adopted this, was it made him a optimist for the rest of his life, which allowed him to live to be about 101 in a good mood. My brother didn't take the messages so well, and we know what happened to him.
Mhm.
I just took it for what it was worth. At the same time, my mother, being Catholic, my father was maybe Jewish, by the way. We
Okay.
never quite determined that because while his father was Jewish, undoubtedly, because his father's family was all here in Los Angeles, they still are. Uh, my grandmother's, his mother, there's no proof that she was Jewish from the old country. She came from an area, but she didn't dress. There were just some things that caused some people to say she's Polish or she's
Mhm.
Ukrainian. She's not Jewish. I don't know where that came from. Okay. And it was always left out of the conversation. So he may or may not be legally Jewish because I don't know if you know, but to be a Jew, your mother has to be a Jew. That's how it works. It doesn't make any difference what your father is. If your mother wasn't a Jew, you're not a Jew.
Oh,
Okay. That's the
I had
law.
no idea.
Now
I had
you
no
know.
idea.
So my mother wanted to get her religious beliefs. So I became a Catholic, went to church every Friday, went to get my baptism and first communication, and I became an altar boy and learned to speak Latin. And there's a lot of hoot watching the priests get little sips of the wine before mass and
Uh-huh.
little sips afterwards. And
So you did the
it
whole
was hard.
Catholic experience then.
Yes, it was hard to keep a straight face at some of the faces the people made when they went to receive the Eucharist. Are you familiar with that?
I am, because actually my mother and my stepfather were Catholic, so I'm very
Okay, so
familiar with that. Yeah,
stick your tongue out and they put the little thing on there. They're supposed
yeah.
to allow it to melt. You can't eat it. But I was right there next to the priest holding the cloth, and I see people chomp on it the second they got in their mouth. I see people break it in half with their tongue and play with it. I see
Mhm.
people keep it stuck halfway in their mouth and go back. It was interesting.
Everyone sort of did what they wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah,
Sounds
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
And when
So,
I was about 16 or 17, I just gave up on that too. I did
mhm.
not believe. I was an agnostic. I believe in a God, but not necessarily their God.
Right. Yeah.
Just like not necessarily the science of mind guy's God, not necessarily the Jewish God. There's just one God.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that must I think a lot of kids go through kind of that with their family's religion, like as you start to think for yourself, you start to question things, which I think like my parents probably questioned things when they were, 16 or 17, and they figured out what worked for them as they got older. But I know it was probably frustrating for your parents, maybe, that you weren't really like on board with any of it.
It was. It was. Um, it turns out, Bill, that I was pretty much in almost all facets of life a late bloomer.
Mhm.
Okay. When I was 18, 17, 18, I wasn't obsessed with girls. That would come later. I wasn't obsessed with sports. That would not come later. I wasn't obsessed with cars and machines and technology. That would change later. Uh, I was only interested in what I was interested in, and that was history, writing, and war.
So let's talk about that. You're in high school, you're in JROTC. Uh, I'm assuming you graduated high school.
Yes.
And so what happens after high school?
Well, in the neighborhood I lived in at the time, are you familiar with Los Angeles at all? The layout of it?
I've been there. I used to live in San Diego, but I'm not real like
No.
100% familiar with Los Angeles.
Okay. I lived in Hancock Park, which is an affluent neighborhood of doctors, lawyers, investment brokers, but it's right in the middle of the city.
Mhm.
A lot of those people chose to live in the suburbs, and they built all these suburbs like Calabasas and Woodland Hills and West Hills and Beverly Hills and all these other hills. Uh, I forgot what I was talking about.
Oh,
Oh,
we were talking about where you lived.
yes, 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 yes. And because of that, because of the prevalence of so many doctors, dentists, and lawyers, my high school was about 90% Jewish. Uh, so every Jewish holiday, there'd be about 200 kids in the school of 3,000.
Hmm.
And of course, there were no classes. We had a lot of fun. Teachers had a lot of fun. But they all went to college. They all took the SAT and they all went to college. Well, I'm there. All my friends are like them. So I took the SAT, didn't do too good. So I went to state college while they went to universities. I did very poorly in the first semester of college. I gained a bad attitude when a music teacher accused me of cheating. One of the early assignments in that class, he taught us rhythm and he
Uh-huh.
allowed us to use things like anything went ding, cling, clunk, like an empty ashtray, a piece of metal, wood block, anything like that. And he taught us rhythm and counts. And he gave us the assignment to go home and make like a 20-second rhythm thing with these available instruments. Tambourine was another one. Triangle was another one. Okay. I thought this was cool. So I went home and I did just that. A rhythm came into my head. Bum, 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 bum. Then another instrument coming in. Da, 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 da. Then another instrument coming in. Da, 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 da. And finally, one at a time, all 8 instruments came in to kind of a crescendo. And that was it. And the students went crazy. They were applauding and shouting because a couple not so good ones had gone before me. And the professor walks right up to me and says, "You didn't write that." And my heart went from here to the bottom of my stomach. And my hand reached for a pocket knife that I wasn't wearing at the time, without a thought in my head. And I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, "No, you couldn't have. I've heard that before." "In this class?" Yes, in this class." I just went back to my seat and I wrote off. I blew off the rest of that semester, all 6 subjects. So I was on probation, academic probation. Well, in the spring of 67, that was fall of 68. In the 66, I'm sorry. In the spring of 67, a bunch of my Jewish friends wanted to go to visit Israel for the spring break. And so we begged our parents and worked. I had part-time jobs then. I was probably one of LA's last corner paper boys, selling papers on the corner, 2 bits. And sometimes we had both the Herald and the Times, so I'd get double the customers. It was fun, really. Made up headlines to shout. You know, Jimmy Hoffa found buried in Lithuania. You know, things like that. People
Right.
just kind of, what? You know, they were driving by. They didn't catch it all. But we did good business. So I started the second semester in academic probation. And here comes spring break, very early in that spring semester. And off we go to Israel. I think we went to France first, maybe got to Italy, then maybe got to Israel. Kind of, you know, playing tourist that we were. We didn't have much time. So we get there, and when was spring break? March, April. And we had a nice vacation, but Israel was not interested in entertaining us. They were getting ready for a war that we didn't catch. We didn't pick up on that while we were there. Despite seeing 5,000 army trucks go by every day, you know, we just thought that's what they do in Israel. The night we were leaving, his family, our friend's family, held a nice dinner for us. They spotlighted all the good Israeli foods like falafel and hummus and touching chicken, and they went out of their way. This town was a little town, and it's also full of Arabs. And it was very confusing to us because to a Jew, you say, Shalom Aleichem. But to an Arab, you say, Salam Aleikum. Shalom Aleichem, Salam Aleikum. What? We finally figured out what to say to each person. So at this dinner at their house, there's these 2, what I thought were like ROTC cadets. There were these 2 Israeli soldiers, a boy and a girl. Couldn't have been more than 20, 21. But just from my military knowledge and the lack of stripes on their arms, I realized very quickly they were officers. And they were apparently cousins of friends of cousins of our hosts and stuff like that. And they happened to be in town. Make a long story short, at the end of dinner, all my friend's family left the room, and it was just the 2 of them and my friend and I. And they very flatly asked us told us very shortly there's going to be a war with Israel against all our Arab neighbors. Okay. He says, can you drive a truck? I said, what kind of truck? A stick shift truck, 4 or 5 speed truck. I said, yeah, everybody in America can drive a stick shift. He asked my friend the same thing. Apparently, Bill, Israel was full of the dysphoria from all of Europe after the war. And Israel was full of these immigrants who never had a car and never learned to drive a car. There was an extreme shortage of people who knew how to drive in Israel. And he asked us if we would be willing for a couple weeks to drive a 2.5-ton truck from the town where we lived to different locations. And then you'd be given a Jeep ride back to home. And I would sure, being an 18, 19-year-old kid, a million questions would go through your head. The first words out of our mouths were, yes. And that's what I did for 8 days of a 6-day war. Wore an Israeli uniform with no rank. And as my guard on my truck was this gorgeous little blonde Polish girl, blue eyes, blonde hair, and an Uzi, and no sense of humor. And she chain smoked Gaulois cigarettes. You know what Gaulois are?
I do not.
Filter. They're French cigarettes with no filter, made with strong Turkish tobacco. And she would chain smoke those in the cab of the truck. And I'd be choking and trying to stay on the road. And once I tried to talk to her, and I just, in friendly conversation, she's right next to me, put my hand on her leg, and she hit me.
Yeah, probably not the right thing to do.
No. So that was probably in day 4 or 5. And for the next couple of days, I didn't say a word to her. I just gagged. About 4 hours a day. She did say thank you at the end. The Israelis, I don't know if I should admit this right here. Let's just say the Israelis did something with our passport. They made everything, as far as the U.S. was concerned, kosher.
Okay. So you're able to get back home.
Yes, we will get back home.
That's a pretty exciting spring break.
Yeah, it's not over.
Yeah.
When it was all over in June, it was time to go home. Only having had a kind of a fake taste of war and loving it, despite the Gaulois, I decided that I wanted to stay in the army. Well, I couldn't be in the Israeli army. I wasn't Jewish. So I took a flight to Marseille, France. And I joined La Légion étrangère, the French Foreign Legion.
Yeah. What was that like?
The training was hellacious. I failed out at least half the training subjects, but they figured out I was smart, so I was given a lot of bookkeeping things to do, list making and stuff. I went through the weapons training, everything, but the physical training and running with a 1,000-pound log, 3 guys carrying it, I just fall on my face. And fortunately or unfortunately, my parents knew this. I would call them, and they would yell at me. And they sent to me, by the will of Allah, the grace of God, my draft notice. I had failed out of college. I had lost my 1A. I was draftable, and there, par avion airmail to this little location in part of France. And the French, to make a long story short, said, we don't do this. This is bullshit. You've signed up for 6 years. And then the colonel calls him into, and they blah, 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 blah. And the next day they call me in. I'm standing attention with my little ball-shaped head, and blah, 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 blah. And it says, because your country is at war with the Indochine, with the North Vietnamese, and because you will probably serve in that conflict, which means a lot to the people of France, we are going to let you go home and honor this notice. And that's what happened.
Well, and maybe a lot of people don't know the French were in Vietnam before we were.
That's why.
Yeah, and a lot of bad stuff happened to them too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before
They
before
wanted me to go there. They wanted
yeah.
me to fight. They knew I wasn't going to make it as a legionnaire.
Yeah. So you get on a plane, you head home. Is that what happens?
And then in May of next year, May of 78, no, January, February, March of 68, I get a report to blah, blah, blah for your physical exam and everything. And I did. And on May 28th, 1968, I joined the U.S. Army. Shipped off to Fort Ord, California for basic training. After 3.5, 4 weeks in the Foreign Legion, I could ace that thing. That was nothing to me.
I was gonna say that probably made boot camp a little bit easier for you, didn't it?
Yeah, yes, it did.
I mean, your head was already shaved.
The physical part easy. The monotony and the boredom and the bullshit of the drill instructors, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's day before graduation. And the lieutenant of the training company comes out holding a sheaf of papers like this. He says, "Eddie, gentlemen, I've gotten your orders here. We know where all of you are going. And I can tell you right now that you are all being assigned to training at Fort blah blah as 11 Bravo infantrymen. And then you will be sent to join a unit in the Republic of Vietnam." You can imagine how that went over.
Yeah. At this point in the war, though, they need the guys over there. Like that's what happened. Yeah.
That's what happens. Except 70% of the people who fought in Vietnam were enlistees. 70%. They only sent 30% of draftees to Vietnam. Most of them went to Germany.
Oh.
Anyway, he says, but for some of you that are still interested in serving your country, if you volunteer to enlist in the Army for just a 3-year term, and here came the biggest lie I have ever heard in my life. We will take you out of the infantry and put you in one of the other 3 or 4 combat arms. Armor, artillery, combat engineers. Bullshit. When you enlist, you get to pick any MOS. Any out of a list of 120 jobs. Any. That's not what he said.
No, they're just going to let you pick one of 3.
Huh?
They were just going to let you pick one of 3, right?
Yeah, I picked armor because I wasn't going to walk anymore.
Yeah.
And engineers, I just knew they do things with mines, and I had developed an aversion to mines. So I re-enlisted, and on May 29th or 30th, I became an RA with orders to Fort Knox, Kentucky to be trained as a tank crewman.
Okay.
That's how that all started.
All right. So did you go home at all in between boot camp and AIT then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because if I'm doing all my math right, your family hasn't seen you in a while because actually you went on spring break and never came home.
Yeah.
So then you finally get home.
They hadn't seen me for about 18 months. Yeah. 19, 20 months. Yeah. I came home and my mom, bless her heart, started to do everything she could to get me out of the Army. Up to going to Washington to see our congressman to get an appointment to West Point.
Oh,
But it was too late. She might have done it while I was still a high school student.
right.
I was regular Army now.
Yeah.
So then she decided, since I'm surely going to Vietnam after advanced training, she's going to break one of my bones and get her good friend, the doctor, to say it's a permanent disability. So she went to this Donald Trump kind of doctor. And it just so happened I had met a new girl. She had a motor scooter. I was driving her on this Vespa. I hit a bump. I fell into the street and I broke my shoulder bone. You have never seen a happier woman than my mother.
Oh, I'll bet, because she didn't have to break a bone. You did it yourself.
Well, yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So I went to the doctor. They did something to it. It was a fracture. It wasn't a clean break. And the bottom line is there's no way the doctor could have goosed this up to a deferment.
Right. Right.
She once said she'd even like me to go back to France and rejoin the Legion. No, thank you. So that was it. That took me through my first 19 years of life.
Okay. An exciting 19 years, by the way. That's a lot of
What?
stuff to pack into 19 years.
You ain't heard shit.
So you get to Fort Knox.
I get to Fort Knox.
Yeah, what happens there?
First thing, I was there for the first 2 months. I was fleeced of all my money by these New York Sharpie streetwise kids
Uh-huh.
who came up with the greatest scams you ever heard to borrow my money and then lose it for her mom's operation. It cost more than they thought. Blah, 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 blah. That's the first thing I learned. The rest of it, well, between 3 years of ROTC and loving reading literature about armies and wars and weapon system, I knew more than any other recruit about the M48 tank, which is what we had at the time. I'd never seen one, but I knew some things about it. Mm-hmm. First day we're in training on the main gun. Some drill sergeant asked, anybody know the maximum range of that 90 millimeter gun? Yes, it's 1,800 meters, or better known as 2,000 yards. That's right. Very good, troop. That immediately got me hated by everybody else in my platoon. So right. I kept my mouth shut after that. Went through AIT. Came home for another leave. This was a long leave. This was a 30-day leave. Mm-hmm. Some uncomfortable things happened during that leave. Personal things. I got my mom to loan money to a family whose daughter I was in love with, and they lost it all.
Oh.
Israeli family, as it turns out. And my brother had been arrested for the first time for possession of stolen property. Had broken his leg on a motorcycle so badly that he was deferred from military service. And things like that. That's all I remember of that leave, pretty much. Then I reported to, I guess it was Fort Lewis, Washington, for a trip over the big pond. And I didn't know what to think. I theoretically, intellectually, kind of knew what might happen, what could happen. But physically, emotionally, I was as dumb as a box of old hammers. Mm-hmm. And the second After you landed in Tonson, I forget the Longben, wherever the big airfield is. And they opened that door, the airplane door, and that heat and smell hit me. I knew I had made the biggest mistake of my life by joining a combat branch. So we went to, usually you're there for 3-4 days and they ship you out to your unit. Your unit sends somebody down for you if they're close to Saigon, or they'll fly you to the nearest big town and then truck you or whatever, little plane you to where you're going.
Uh-huh.
I got orders to report to the 9th Riverine Squadron in 3 Corps, river gunboats. Me, a tanker.
Right. How did that happen?
There was a time, a year or two before, where the 9th Infantry Division did run a riverine force.
Uh-huh.
But the 9th Division had left Vietnam in total. They were the only unit that went to Nam as a division and left Nam as a division. And all the stupid lieutenant and personnel S1 could figure out was, well, we'll put you in this was transition. This was when we were going to Vietnamization of the war. You know, starting to turn over our weapons, equipments, and responsibilities to the ARVNs, the Army of South Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
To make a long story short, I ended up on a PB boat with 6 Vietnamese sailors and me. None who spoke English. And I asked I went back to the S1 and said, what am I supposed to do? It's don't worry. All you got to do is you're the captain and you're the one that operates the radio. That's it. I'm the captain and I operate the radio, but I can't talk to my crew. They know what to do. They've been doing this for months.
Well, how much faith did you have that they knew what to do? I mean, yeah. Did any of them speak French?
I can't swim, for one thing. Anyway, every time we got back to the base there, I can't remember if it was a ship or it was a Vietnamese camp. Anyway, we all cleaned up the boat, we filled it, checked the engine oil, blah, blah, blah. We loaded ammo if we shot up any. I think maybe 7-8 days into that, when I threatened to go to the IG, I got new orders. I had been shot at by VC and NVA on that boat exactly this many times in a week.
So there was nothing going on.
There was nothing going on.
Yeah.
So they decided to send me to Northern I Corps, where 50% of all U.S. deaths occurred during the Vietnam War. Hello, I Corps. And I was assigned to a cavalry squadron. B Troop, 3rd Cavalry. B Troop, 3rd Squadron, 5th Cavalry. Temporarily assigned to, I think it was the 5th Infantry Division, the Red Diamonds, the Red Devils. We were their cavalry squadron. But we were, organizationally, we were part of the 9th Division. We were the cavalry squadron of the 3rd Battalion of the 9th Division. So, and that never changed. So while everybody's going on wearing red diamonds, we've got the cookie cutter. The red, white, the white dot in the center, patch of the 9th Division, which causes all kinds of confusion. To make another long story short, because we call ourselves the bastard cav. In the 12 months that I was there, we probably were assigned to 6 or 7 different units. 25th Infantry Division, AmeriCal, 101st Airborne, 5th Mechanized, I think 3rd Marines, And I think even an Arban unit we were assigned to once because our home division was gone. So who needs an armored cavalry squadron? I do. Okay, off we went.
Yeah. Yeah. They always
And
want the resources over there is what it is.
I'm sorry?
I say they always want the resources. Like you had vehicles or you had ammunition or you had bodies and they needed them.
Yeah, we had a lot
Mm-hmm.
of that. Uh, so finally things were normal. I was back where I was supposed to be. And I ended up in the tank crew in a base camp called Dong Ha, about 17 miles from the DMZ, within artillery range of North Vietnam. A place whose ammo dump had been blown up at least 3 times in the past 4 years. It gets fuzzy here. I was a new guy. Some practical jokes were played on me. And I had another one of these reactions. Like I had with the music professor,
Mm-hmm.
with some of my buddies, crew of another tank. They said, you haven't had your salt pill today, and it's going to upset your stomach, but, he was a buck sergeant. Here, I'm ordering you to take these salt pills, and the best thing to take it with is a Coke. So I said, oh, thank you, Sergeant. Appreciate it, man. So I take my salt pills, take my Coke, my Pepsi, whatever it was, and they explode in my stomach, and I start foaming at the mouth.
Oh, boy.
And I go down on my knees barfing, and they're all standing around laughing. And I get to my knees again, and I wore a 45 caliber pistol this time in my shoulder holster. But I just thought about it. I didn't do anything. That was my first reaction.
Yeah.
That was my first reaction. So I think there's something psychologically wrong with me. Anyway, turned out to be a great group of people. And there I am in Vietnam. Made some friends. There were 3 tanks in a cavalry platoon and 7 or 8 armored personnel carriers, 113s. And I was the gunner on the platoon sergeant's tank very shortly after I got there. But I end up being the tank commander of that tank very often because being the platoon sergeant, he was always jumping off the tank to go take care of a problem. He was responsible for every man in the platoon.
Yeah. He had a lot of other things to do.
Yeah. So I said, Alpert, get on the 50, take, take charge.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been there a month and I'm taking charge. Well, I knew the basics. You sit up there with a 50 cal and wait for something bad to happen.
Right.
So I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from this guy. I love this guy. He was a character. There was nothing about that tank he did not know. There was nothing he could not fix in his sleep. If a tank threw a track, he'd jump off the tank, give me his helmet and 50, and he'd be over there and by himself, bare-shirted, sweating like a pig, get that track on.
Yeah.
15 minutes. It'd take a tank crew 2 hours to do it normally. He was just awesome. He was just awesome. Anyway, that was my introduction to Vietnam.
And then, so when you finally got with this group, is this where you stayed then with them? And what was your mission there?
What was our mission?
Yeah, what was your mission in your part of the world there?
We basically performed 2 major functions. That of convoy escort to places like Khe Sanh, because you couldn't get a group of trucks and PCs would never make it to Khe Sanh alive. They didn't have tanks and cavalry with them. Okay. We also provided the support for the morning engineer mine sweep. And after what I saw happen to those guys, and I thought about almost joining the engineers, saw through.
Yeah, that's a rough job. For people who don't know, the engineers don't just build bridges. They go out
No, they
and
don't.
they look for explosives every morning on the routes, right? And a lot of times they get blown up when they're doing it.
One morning I'll never forget. There were 6 of them out in front of us. We were on Highway 9 heading towards, this convoy was for Quezon. And as you come down Highway 9, you have to make a left turn. And off to the right, across this huge valley, is a huge little mountain called the Rock Pile, which talk to any Marine that was in Nam about the Rock Pile, and you'll hear stories. And there were 6 Marines, 6 engineers, 2 with sweepers, 2 with them with security, and 2 more with some other contraption. And they were about 50 yards ahead of us. I think the lead vehicle was a tank. And they made the left-hand turn, and the road widened there a little bit. The engineers had built a thing to get, to make that turn so, tracks
Yeah.
and stuff wouldn't slip off the edge. And the NVA had zeroed it with mortars already. And in 30 seconds, they were all dead. And there are pieces of them all over the place, on the rocks, on the road, some with their clothes blown off. Needless to say, we didn't complete the convoy that day.
Right. And this is right in front of you. You okay?
I'm sorry?
I said this is right in front of you, like
Yeah.
but for 10 seconds that would have been you.
I'm sorry?
Had it not been for them, but for like 10 or 15 seconds, that would have been you coming around that corner. Then.
Well, yeah, but we were in an armored vehicle.
Right.
They were walking.
Right. Yeah.
It was for them. The mortar ambush was set up specifically for them. They must have fired 4 or 5 rounds. Boom, 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 boom. It was all over.
Well, and how did that impact you while you were there? You know what I'm asking? Like,
not as much as it impresses me now.
Right. Right. I don't think people understand that. Like when it happens when you're there, you just deal with it, but you don't really deal with it till you come home.
No.
Yeah. And how much longer were you there after that incident?
7 months.
Yeah. So for 7 months, you just kind of stuffed it away, right? Did you have other incidents like that happen while you were there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Twice my platoon was attacked. When I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my biggest regret of the whole war. I know I could have changed the outcome. I know I could have. But once they were guarding a convoy. No, wait a minute. I'm getting some things confused here. I think I'm mixing up 2 events.
That's fine. Take your time.
Okay. This may be the same day, the same convoy as the mortar incident, or it may have been a different convoy. I was in the rear with a broken tank. I had come out. That day, tank had hit a mine. There had been snipers. A platoon sergeant was killed, shot in the head by a sniper, and they did not proceed with the convoy. The night of that action, my tank was fixed, and I brought it out to join them. And they told me, Alpert, whatever you do, I know it's dark, but for God's sake, Four Eyes, don't throw a fucking track.
Yeah.
So I get within 60 yards of the Ron site. And I throw a track. I couldn't see what was there. Driver couldn't see what was there. It was muddy as hell. And we threw a track. And Wonder First Sergeant came out and fixed it in a half hour with me sitting on the 50 for being a bad tank commander. Anyway, the platoon sergeant, the platoon leader, asshole. West Point guy. He calls a platoon meeting of all the vehicle command. At that point, I was the tank commander of the platoon sergeant's tank because the platoon sergeant couldn't ride tanks anymore. He couldn't control his unit. He went to a PC to ride on a PC. So now the lieutenant, the platoon leader, and the platoon sergeant were both on PCs, leaving the platoons in the cavalry platoon. The lieutenant rides in the track, and the platoon sergeant rides in the tank. But the platoon sergeant didn't want to ride in the tank. So I was his gunner. They made me the track commander, and I was for the rest of my tour in Vietnam.
Okay.
So I was in that status when I came out that night, threw a track and put it on. They call a meeting, a late meeting, unusual. And they're all squatting down. And he tells us they've decided to continue this convoy in the morning. But this time, we're not going to take it at mine clearing pace. We're going to thunder run it. Thunder run it means everybody driving as fast as you can. And if anybody stops, the first vehicle behind them that can do it just pushes them off the road. Tank pushes a truck off the road. Tank pushes a PC off the road. Tank pushes another tank off the road. Nothing stops it. And what our platoon was going to do was okay, here's the road. It makes the curve. This is where the mine thing was. And at this curve, we had to slow down to make the curve, okay? Our vehicles had to slow down. And the platoon leader said, okay, who wants to lead the convoy? It has to be from our platoon. And because I had been in the rear the day before when all the shit happened, every eye turned straight to me. And nobody had to say anything because I knew what they were all saying. You missed yesterday's shit, boy. You're not going to miss today's shit.
Yeah, it's your turn.
34 will go, sir. He said, okay, we're going to thunder run it, but this time it's going to be different. As we make that turn, as you get about 100 yards past the turn, I want you to turn out and aim to the right towards the rock pile. And every 100 or 150 yards, the next vehicle will turn out. So there could be no attack as the convoy of trucks went behind us. So the track would go like, and the trucks behind us are going, he said, but one thing, Sergeant Alpert, I expect us to be ambushed tomorrow. They couldn't do what they did today and not be ready for an ambush tomorrow. So when you get to this curve, you just start shooting the shit out of the bushes to your right. Your coax, your 50 cal, and your main gun if you want. Now at this time, and that's another story, we didn't have nice big steel M48s. We had little piece of shit aluminum tanks called M551 Sheridan, which a armor-piercing rifle bullet could penetrate. Tank.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, next day woke, 4 in the morning. As soon as the sun came up, we started going. And I went there and I got to where he said, and it didn't look like an ambush. The brush wasn't thick enough. I was going to save my ammo. He says, start shooting. And I said, negative, stand by, wait out. And I just ignored him. He said, 3-4, start shooting. I waited till I couldn't see through the bushes. So I couldn't
Yeah.
see through the trees. And I started shooting. And I started shooting. And we stopped in the main gun. Kaboom! And the coax, which was a mechanical piece of shit that cost so many soldiers their lives, the M73, because the ordnance people modified the machine gun after it had been designed and approved for production. And the modification caused the gun to jam after every 3 rounds.
Oh.
For everybody. In Germany, in the Nam, everybody who had a tank with an M70 machine gun could never get that son of a bitch to fire, or in a few rounds, a few bursts. It would just stop. Because to make the angle of the feed from the feeding chute where the ammunition was stored, they had to cut about 1 inch off the back of the receiver to line up the in part of the machine gun with the ammunition belt coming in.
Uh-huh.
They go, that won't hurt anything. Yeah. So I didn't depend on our coax for anything. Anyway, we still got a few bursts out of it. And I pulled in my position. I'm sitting there ready for something to happen. And sure enough, here come behind me, and the trucks are rolling, and down the road, a PC goes, turns out 100 yards away, and the trucks keep going by. After maybe 10 minutes, the trucks are all through. Everybody made it. And so everybody went on kind of standby, stay on your weapons, but, we didn't get attacked. Turns out I'm the reason we didn't get attacked. I was a little nervous, but nothing happened. So I got out of my tank. I had my gunner come up, which the Army murdered a few months later. I'll tell you about that. To get on the 50, and I went on the back deck. I was taking a piss. And I was looking down, and I was pissing on a pile of RPG and RPG launchers. Brand new. Maybe 15, 20 rockets, maybe 10, 12 launchers. And I look up and I see these little spider holes back in the woods. I see little rattan woven baskets with Chicom grenades laying next to these little foxholes. I see empty ammo boxes. We had broken up that ambush by firing and never knew it. They just did him out and ran. We started shooting at them. They didn't expect that. They thought it was going to be like the day before.
Right.
They didn't expect a tank to stop right in front of them and start shooting at them. They left their weapons. They left, what's that song about 1812? They ran through the brambles and they ran through the briars. They ran through the places where a rabbit couldn't go. They sure did.
Yeah.
And then I called the lieutenant to come over fast. I said, bring a cav platoon doesn't have grunts. It has these things called the 11 Deltas, which are armored scouts.
Mm-hmm.
And our scouts had an attitude. They wouldn't do infantry work. They wouldn't dig foxholes at night. They wouldn't go on patrol by themselves. They were scouts, not grunts. Anyway, I called him to get some of those scouts to get into that complex and secure it. You could probably see the NVA running away. They could probably call Artie right on it to get to the edge of the drop over into the valley. Negative. He probably knew it was a waste of time ordering him to do that.
Right.
As stupid as he was, he figured that out. So the lieutenant comes down, sees all this, goes, oh my God. Picks up an RPG and a launcher, takes it back to the troop CO, comes back and says, Alpert, move your tank about 100 yards to the left. I said, why, Lieutenant? I'm securing this ambush site. Don't worry about it. It's secured, okay? Just move. And that's the last I heard about that. No medals, no congratulations, no souvenirs. He got it all.
Not even a handshake.
Not even a handshake.
Oh. So how did the rest of that convoy go then?
They got through fine.
Good. Good.
They got through fine.
So you were in Vietnam for a whole year then, or was
A
it?
couple of weeks shy, except for my tour with the Vietnamese Navy, the whole time of a year.
Right. I forgot about that. The Vietnamese Navy. Did you get any Navy awards while you were doing that?
Yeah, I should get a little anchor, stem and anchor there thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So
Okay,
how did the rest of that tour go?
badly. The worst was yet to come. I'm trying to put this in chronological order. Shortly after that incident, my R&R came up. Oh, that's another story to tell right there. My R&R came up. And my parents, my mother, of course, researched R&Rs and knew all about them and told me that I was going to Hong Kong and that they were going to meet me there during my R&R. To which I said, that means no fun for this guy.
Right.
No girls, no bars. Lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. Now there's two stories. I'll stop the Nam story and tell you the R&R story.
Yeah.
I was there waiting for them in the Mandarin, which is the most luxurious hotel. The first night I had to go where the Army sent me to this like hostel or motel where the girls were lined up waiting for us and waving and hugging us as we came in. But no, not me. I couldn't get a girl because I was moving to the Mandarin. And I moved to the Mandarin. And at that time, one of the big things for GIs going to Hong Kong for R&R was to get silk suits. It was a dime on a dollar. So, and they had all that downstairs, and I had all this money. You know, you only get paid like $40 in cash a month in Vietnam. They save all the rest for you, or maybe $20 in cash. And funny money, these voucher like funny monopoly money that you can only spend in U.S. facilities.
Yeah, we had the same thing in Iraq. It was
funny money,
PX money basically. They were like cardboard pogs and funny money. Yeah. So anyway, you go to the Mandarin. You want to get a silk suit.
Oh boy, should have stayed a couple and made a set out of them.
Yeah.
I'll send you mine. I don't know where they are anymore. Anyway, so that's all I had to do. So I spent 2.5 days of my 7-day R&R getting fitted for suits. Finally, they arrived at the third day of my R&R. They're in the same hotel. They check in. I was just coming back from downstairs from the tailors with the first of my 2 or 3 suits. I got 10 suits made and had them shipped home. I couldn't get into any one of them right now. Not a one. In fact, it wasn't long after the Army I could not get into them. But anyway, so I put on the one I liked the most with my silk tie and everything, my solid silver cufflinks and everything. And I go down to the floor, and the door to the room's cracked a little bit. And I knock on the door, and I hear my father scream, "Jeff!" Like he just seen me get shot or something. He didn't know what to expect. And I pushed the door open, and he's standing there, big-eyed with tears coming down his eyes, looking at me in this 3-piece tailored suit. And he starts crying and runs up and hugs me. Turns out he was expecting to see me in combat gear with mud on my face and C-rations in my helmet and an M16 and worn clothes and a bandage on my thing and a bayonet in my belt and torn up boots. And was he in for a surprise? That was the biggest shock of his life, he said.
Not on R&R, right? You're not going to see that on R&R.
But he was World War II. So when you tell him a combat soldier come to see you, that's what he pictured.
Yeah.
He'd seen it. So that was a hoot. I also got hepatitis A from eating the restaurant's food.
Oh.
That was fun. So I went through a bout of that in my 7 days.
Oof.
And then my mother talks about getting my R&R extended. And the next day, I just dropped by their room and said, bye, Mom, bye, Dad, love you. I went back. No one was going to extend my R&R. R&R sucked as far as I was concerned, except
Yeah.
with the suits.
Yeah. So you get back from
Then,
your R&R that wasn't really R&R.
yeah, yeah. Who meets their parents at R&R? WTF?
You do, Jeff.
So,
You do.
yeah. Then I get back, and while I was gone on this fantastic R&R, my unit was hit one night. My platoon. And they blew the shit out of it. We medevaced 4 guys, 2 with their legs blown off. The platoon sergeant was hit. The new platoon sergeant was hit. 1 track caught on fire. It's hard to make aluminum burn, but it burns. It burns like wax when you get it hot enough. 1 PC burned to the ground. My tank had bullet holes in the containers on the bustle rack where it carried our personal stuff. None of the deltas manned the foxholes in between the tracks for protection that night. Nobody went out on ambush patrols to protect the perimeter that night. They got creamed. They ended up all hiding in the mortar pit for the rest of the night. Every vehicle was abandoned. And all 30 of them, 40 of them, ended up hiding. When the mortar pit sets up, it builds a little dirt berm about this high around its track to keep, rolling fire stuff away from the charges, because you got open gunpowder on a mortar, those little packets of powder that are connected to everyone. That's how you adjust the range. You leave on or pull out some powder packets that are already on the mortar shell, and you throw them in a pile. And you don't want sparks, so you have a berm about this high. So everybody, that's the only kind of protection that was left. And so everybody from every track, deltas, scouts, tank crews, everybody, except one tanker who ended up being my gunner. He stayed in his tank, his piece of shit Sheridan, firing at the enemy where you thought they would be with the main gun. Now, the Sheridan piece of shit doesn't have a gun like any other tank in the world that fires a fixed round. Here's the shell in a brass casing. No, it fires a shellless round with the projectile with a nylon bag sewn around it, and in that bag is the propellant for the shell. And if you accidentally poke a hole in the bag propellant, the gunpowder pieces fall over your turret and under your turret and around the ammo, and you never find them. That's another story. Anyway, by him, and the gun tube was cleared of burning material left by from the cartridge by forced air. They had a compressor on board that a few seconds after shooting, it closed up the breech and blew air through the tube, which blew the burning residue out. Only then did the breech open up again and ready for another round. That whole procedure took about 20 to 25 seconds. You could fire 2 rounds a minute with that tank. 2 rounds a minute. You know how many rounds in an M90? We could fire in 1 minute. I could fire 50 rounds in a minute in an M48.
Yeah,
But he
in
was
that
up
time
there.
between
Not only
shooting
that,
and
he had no loader. He had to crawl in to be the loader. He had to crawl up to the TC to aim and fire. He had to crawl back down to load the gun. They didn't give him shit, because admitting to what he did would raise the question, well, why was he the only one doing that?
right.
And then everyone looks at everybody else and goes, the same lieutenant. Okay, I feel guilty for that, and I still do. A few weeks later, We're in a big Ron site. Ron site is tanks curl up for the night for protection. It's like, circle the wagons with
Yeah.
all the guns pointed out. And supposedly foxholes filled with infantrymen in between tanks, so you can't sneak behind a tank and throw grenades in it, which our deltas never did. A buck sergeant, a shake and bake. I was a spec 5. He was a buck sergeant. So technically he outranked me. He says, we need to borrow your gunner. Some generals are here to see how the Sheridan works. And we don't have a loader for this tank. So let me borrow Vernon for this demonstration. I said, no. He's my gunner, my loader. I'm not letting him go play games with you. And he said, well, if you want, I'll bring the lieutenant over here and make it an order. Vernon went willingly. Well, I hear the Sheridan fire around. Then I hear the Sheridan fire around. And then I don't hear anything. And I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. And suddenly I see people running towards the other side of the Ron site, the berm. And I hear a slick coming in. Wacka, wacka, wacka. It's a dust-off slick. It's got the Red Cross on the nose.
Yeah.
What the fuck? So I jumped out of my tank. The hell with anybody up there. And I ran up there. And I must have had blood in my eyes because some of the guys from my platoon ran up and grabbed me. I had my 45 not only on me, in my hand, and cocked, carrying it by my side. Because I just knew something had happened to Vernon. And something had happened to Vernon. Due to a technical fault of the system that nobody else ever fucking had, while he was loading the third round, the gun went off in his face. And he took the recoil of the gun in his forehead. Now, on the back operating handle of that piece of shit Sheridan is not a lever, a metal lever like a regular tank. It's a little wound wooden knob that you use to turn the breech open. It's a screw breech.
Uh-huh.
Got that right between the eyes, right through the helmet. He had a tanker's helmet on, a CBC helmet. And they took my gun away, and the XO of the troop took me to his tent, or his PC. It's a headquarters PC. Mm-hmm. And just sat there with me and just talked about things for a while till the chopper left. And finally, I went and asked the TC what happened. Well, I don't know. As soon as the breech closed, it fired. The second the breech started to close, it fired. I said, maybe you didn't take your finger off the trigger from the last round? No, I didn't. I couldn't do that, couldn't do that. And I was ready to punch his lights out, and they jumped me again, dragged me away. I'm just a little bitty 5'8" fart with glasses. I could have split his guts out. And I looked for a chance to kill him for the rest of my tour. That tank commander. Never had it. Never had the opportunity.
And this is just one more time where you've got to go to work every day and basically suck it up, right?
Yeah.
Like each one of these incidents builds on the next. And if you think about it, like, the first incident that you had before you even went overseas, you didn't have a knife on you. The second incident, you just thought about pulling your gun out, and the third one, you actually pulled it out because was it getting to the point where you just had enough?
I'm sorry?
Was it getting to the point where you just had enough? Like what else can happen?
No.
Okay.
It was situation specific.
Okay.
It wasn't that I'm aware of. It wasn't a general feeling I've had enough. I'm going to shoot myself or somebody. No.
It was just each incident was like that. Separately.
Each incident, somebody wronged me.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that's how I respond now.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I
So
don't
how
carry a
much?
gun, even though I can.
Well,
In Florida, anybody over 21 can carry a concealed weapon. No registration, no
right.
training, nothing. Just stick it in your belt on the way out to the market. But I don't. That's the reason I don't.
Mm-hmm. How much longer did you have left on your tour after this incident?
The last couple months were a blur. It started to rain.
Uh-huh.
It was the rainy season. This was like September. Uh, oh, yeah. The other time my unit got messed up and I wasn't there. I wasn't there because my tank, piece of shit, had broken down again. And I was in the rear, and they were up by an observation post called Charlie C, right on the DMZ.
Mm-hmm.
You can see Vietnamese buildings. You know, you can almost throw a rock across it. And it's been that way since 1954. Nobody knows how many mines are planted on that border or where. Anyway, we had 3 tracks hit mines the first day they were up there. And they ran for their lives, basically. They went back to Dong Ha under no specific orders I'm aware of. Once again, I wasn't there to save the day. The thing with mines is you don't know whether it's a mine they just left for a laugh or whether it was an ambush mine where it was a command detonated. In other words, rolling over it didn't set the mine off. They had a little electric switch that set the mine off. And they would wait till like the first or second vehicle of a convoy came by and they'd blow it. Blowing up that vehicle blocked the front of the convoy. Then they hit RPGs, the last vehicle of the convoy. And then they just worked their way in toward the middle. And since we knew that's exactly what happened here, we weren't going to wait around for that. So they just left. And even though it might have been cowardice in the face of the enemy, it's the only logical and reasonable action they could have taken. I don't think bad of them for doing that. Right. I wish they'd killed a couple of scouts. But that was the other thing I feel bad about, not being there for that.
Well, another point to bring up is, you know, when we fought in Iraq, you heard a lot about IEDs, improvised explosive devices, right? And Vietnam vets know that stuff's been around for a long time. That wasn't new for the enemy to do this. That's a standard tactic. But we seemed surprised 40 years later when we were seeing the same thing in Iraq and
reacting the same way.
Well, in for all intents and purposes, pretending like it was new, like, oh, well, this is something different. We've never seen this before. And so I want the audience to understand, you know, when you're talking about a command detonated mine, it's what we called an IED, but it's the same damn thing with the same intended purpose.
Yes. Now that I think about it, it's exactly the same thing, except instead of remote, it's done by wire.
Yeah, or a cell phone. They use cell phones where I was at.
We didn't have cell phones then.
We didn't have cell phones. There were no cell phones. I know.
We didn't even have pagers then.
I'm with you, brother. 100% with you. So you know, I hear you say, you've said several times, like, you know, I wish I would have been there, or, you know, there was something you could have done. And I know we're going to continue talking through this, but have you ever gotten to the point where you realized that there really wasn't anything you could have done, even if you would have been there?
I can't go there.
Because shit's going to happen, especially whether we're there or not.
The night ambush.
Right.
If I admit that to myself, then I would have run like the rest of them and jumped into the berm and hid. Or I would have been up on my tank firing like Vernon would.
Right.
But I'll never know what I would have done. So I don't think me being there in that case. I was not there to share the grief.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we don't get the benefit of knowing what would have happened if we would have done something different, right? We only know what happened
Yeah.
because it happened. We don't ever get to know if I'd have turned right instead of left, what would have happened. We don't ever get to know that. But we can make up in our head what might have happened, but we just don't ever get to know that. And that can be
That's
irritating.
self-destructive.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So you were telling me that towards the end of your tour it started raining. Was it like the rainy season then? Is that
Yeah, but a lot of times he would get missed. Occasionally, when they knew there were NVA in the area, they gave us this ground radar.
Mhm.
Okay, it's only about that tall, and there's an operator with it, and it could see through the rain and mist. And the night they were hit, they saw movement out there, but it was so inexact they couldn't tell from where it was. Somewhere in this 180-degree circle, there's something out there that wasn't there when we set up. Okay. And I think that's when some people thought it'd be a good time to go visit the mortar crew. I don't know. I think Vernon died in 1986. I'm in the process of contacting his family. I haven't had the guts yet to contact his family and tell them who I am and what happened to him. He was only have been 36 years old. I'm to me, it's even money. He died from his injuries.
So I want to go, okay, I want to go back because I didn't catch this when we first started talking about it, but he survived that traumatic injury.
No one told us that. I found out on my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
After the war, after the army.
Right. Yeah.
We had computers then.
Yeah. Well, we're not done with our conversation yet, but I just want to put this in your head. I would do everything you can to talk to his family. And the reason is, in my experience, is that it's so helpful for the family. It's also really super helpful for you. And I can tell you that from my experience. There's a lot of fear about going and talking to these families, or how is that going to impact me, or how are they going to react? Almost always the reaction is like relief, like they get to talk to someone who knew their son before all this stuff happened to them.
I want to badly.
And you, Jeff, get to talk to them, and that's going to help you because you're going to make that connection. And I think Vern deserves it. I think you deserve it. And I think that family deserves it. There's no way that nobody loses in that situation. You know what I mean? That's a win for everybody, but it's hard as hell to do because it's scary.
Well, I still have research to do. The one to go on was their last known phone number, but I'll hunt them down. I'll find them.
Yeah, there's ways to do it, and when we get done talking, I can tell you some of those ways that I've done this. But there are ways to make that happen. So I want to go back a little bit. Then you finished out your tour in Vietnam. Is there anything else there that you wanted to share before you end your tour in Vietnam?
Yes.
Okay.
When you come home, your flight scheduling is always flaky, just like your arrival is. That's how I ended up in the Vietnamese Navy.
Right.
And by the time I find out that I've been at Tan Son Nhut or Van Waar, wherever the base is, it flies you home. I've been there for a long time, like 5-6 days already. And when I finally found out my flight, it was too late to contact my parents. So I was driving home unannounced. Well, I got home on a Saturday night, and at the airport, I met another guy who I went to Vietnam with, who was on the same flight and was with me in the thing before he went off to join his unit, and went off to join the Vietnamese Navy. And he got home that same night, that same day. So we were sitting in the bar, and we started to get shit faced. And he could hold his liquor better than me. And the waitress there, it was about 10 to 2, closing at 2. And the waitress kind of made it clear that she was willing to go home with one of us or take one of us home. So then we both got into this pathetic act. But he won, just
Yeah.
as well as he did. So half drunk, I caught a taxi to home. I get home. It might have been earlier than that. It might have been about 1 in the morning. Okay. And nobody's home. I ring the doorbell, I knock on the door, and all I hear is the dog barking. Bobo, my mother's poodle. He knew who was home.
Mm-hmm.
So I just threw my duffel bag on the front steps under the light, sat down, threw my saucer cap away, and started smoking cigarettes. And I see a car pull up next door, a neighbor's home. And the neighbor walks over and he says, "What's wrong with you? You look like you swallowed a snake." I said, "I just swallowed 365 snakes." And he said, "Come over. I'll give you a drink. You need a drink." I don't know if you watched TV in the 80s and 90s, but did you ever watch a TV show called Barney Miller?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You remember the Asian cop?
Uh-huh.
The straight-faced cop who always came out with one-liners? Jack
Yeah.
Sue? That was
Yeah.
him. That was my neighbor.
Oh. So you get back from Vietnam and you're having drinks with an actor.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And he
That was a
took care of
great
me.
show, by the way. I really enjoyed watching it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was. Him and Abe Pagoda.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so he took care of me until my parents got home.
Mm-hmm.
They were out at a private club partying. And the next morning when I woke up, my mom came in to wake me up, and I turned on her with a knife in my hand.
Yeah.
I slept with a knife under my pillow. I didn't have any guns. Well, I was going to dig out my old hunting rifle. And that taught her not to wake me up like that, by shaking me and talking, yelling at me. And I stopped sleeping with something under my pillow about 20 years ago.
Old habits die hard, right?
I still sleep with a gun next to the bed.
Yeah. Well, so you left Vietnam and you came right home.
I came home an alcoholic sergeant.
Yeah. Yeah, my point is there was no like decompression zone where you took a month or whatever. You just came right home.
Well,
So
they give you a month,
Oh, do they? Okay.
but most of you sleep.
Yeah.
Most of that month you sleep. Then by then came time to leave the Army. I'm in no condition to leave the Army. You know, I'm a pretty good sergeant during the day, but I'm drinking with the other alcoholic sergeants every night. Mm-hmm. And I said, I can't go home like this. So I just signed up for 6 more years. And that's how long it took me to stop doing that. And by the end of year 9, I was under control and sick of the Army because I was stuck in tanks. That was my primary MOS. Although I had done a million wonderful jobs in those 6 years. I had been a community liaison representative. I had been a DOD pimp. for soldiers in Germany. I had been a chemical instructor. I had been a drill sergeant. I had some great duties in those last 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
All of them as good as that year in Nam was bad.
Yeah.
And why I left is because the day before my first platoon was going to graduate basic training, the colonel of my home battalion receives a message from the general division. Oh, the Israelis started to use our tactics in the Yom Kippur War, and they got their asses kicked. We got to change our tactics right now, right now. Tomorrow night, your whole battalion is going to the firing range, and you've got to be able to engage the target, get a first round kill on. Da, 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 da. And they called me back. He would not listen to anybody, and they called me back. And I went through the range. I probably got a D plus. But I did it. I also missed my platoon's graduation. I also resigned 2 months later when my reenlistment date came up. Fuck you. Adios, boy. I
So
had enough of the Army by then.
you said that you signed up for 6 more years, and it took you that long to stop drinking.
Stop everything.
Yeah.
Playing with a gun.
Yeah. So what prompted you to know that you needed to quit doing that stuff?
The night I was on CQ duty, you know what CQ is?
I do.
At
Trench
night,
quarters.
Yeah. Okay. And I was bored, and I had just gotten this set of Civil War muzzle loading pistols. And a friend of mine brought in a bottle and a paper bag. And next thing I knew, I was out shooting out street lamps in the battalion courtyard there with my 1854 Navy Colt 36 caliber. I lived to survive that. Everybody covered for me, but that was my wake up call.
Yeah, that's a career ender right there. Yeah.
Or at least a one-way ticket to the shrink.
Right, right. You'd sit on a couch for a long time after doing that. So do you still not drink?
No, I can drink occasionally
Okay.
when I want to, but I don't let it control me. I'm also on meds that respond very poorly to alcohol. I take 2 different opiates for my particular injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't take opiates and drink alcohol. You'll wake up on the floor.
Right. You can, but it's not a good idea.
Oh,
right.
Right. The time or two I tried it, I ended up on the floor.
Yeah. No, I hear you. So what? So you got out of the Army. What did you do after the Army? What was that next step?
Okay. I kind of fell back into a routine. I got a job with a security company, West Tech Security, a derivative of Westinghouse Security Systems. And I got to work at their central station where the people who had alarms that reported in at their homes, it was manned 24 hours, and we'd call the police or tell them how to reset their alarm and stuff. I had some run-ins with celebrities too in that job. I just had Jacqueline Smith call me a lying motherfucker. I once had Don Meredith throw a swing at me when I was out to his.
I get Don Meredith, but Jacqueline Smith called you a lying motherfucker. What's that all about? Can you tell me that story?
Yeah. Okay. Sometimes I rode into the field, especially on weekends, with the guys, because we always had a 2-man team or 2-person team go out to respond to a call, especially when there was a guest there and they didn't know how to turn off the alarm, and the owner didn't tell them the code word, and we didn't know who they were. So weekends they could call me to go with whoever service guy was going out there. So we went out there to his house, or was it Dinah Shore's house? It was somebody's house that had a little putting green, a sand on the beach, Malibu. Mm-hmm. And we reset the alarm and went back in the truck. And he comes out of the house and the alarm's ring. And he starts yelling at you, reset the alarm. We didn't do it right. This went on for 3 times. And finally, I said to him, standing in front of him, said, Mr. whatever the fuck your name is, I have to explain to you, you're setting these alarms off. It's you. It's not me, you little. And he spins himself around and falls on his face.
Oh, no.
And I leave him there. And I go set the alarm. And then me and John, he went back to the office. I went home. We had a lot of run-ins with celebrities who were setting their own alarms off and then couldn't, or for company, for needing company, from desperate loneliness, would set their alarms off on purpose to have somebody to talk to.
I could see that. I could see that happening. So how long did you do that?
About a year while I was going to college.
So
I went back to the same college I failed out of.
In when, so this is like 76 or 1980? Okay.
Well, I got an early out.
Okay.
So I got out at 77.
Okay.
78, I started going back to school.
Okay.
My school. No, this is a different school, Santa Monica College, a 2-year college.
Uh-huh.
And I was going to major in journalism, and I did, and I got like on the dean's honor list. I got all A's all the time. Of course, I'm 20 years older than any other student in the class, but
right.
And then I transferred to the college I failed out of in 1966, 67, San Fernando Valley, California State University. But back then it was San Fernando Valley State College. And for the next 2.5 years, at the end of every semester, I would get an envelope from the school, and in the envelope were 2 little letters. And I would take out the first letter and read, "Congratulations, your grade point average has allowed me to put you on my dean's honor list for the semester of some blah, 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 blah." Take out the second letter. "Be advised, you are still on academic probation. You cannot, you will not be a district, you will not be until further notice." For the next 6 semesters, I got that double letter.
I want to share something with you. I know we're telling your stories, but I got to tell you this. Friggin' colleges have a long memory because I did the same thing that you did with college. I went to the local college here when I graduated high school. I was not a stellar student. I was there for about 10 minutes and I managed to fail every class I took, right? So I left and I joined the Navy. So fast forward like 35 freaking years later, I'm going back. I'm going to get my degree, but I want to finish up. I can go to this local college to do the stuff cheaper. I get there and they put me on academic probation. I'm like, dude, that was 35. How the hell do you guys know this stuff? It was 35 years ago. Most of the people are probably dead by now, right? So anyway, I didn't mean to step on your story, but when you said that, I'm like, God, I'm not the only one. I am not the only one.
No, I couldn't believe it either.
Yeah, so you're on academic probation over there.
One day I went into them and I bought them this. This is my from old Hollywood. This is my my American Legion cap. By the way, this is the thank you the Army gave me. If you can see them,
I can. My boy has has his CIB as well.
He had his what?
He has his combat infantry badge as well. His CIB. He served in Iraq the year after I got back.
Okay, he okay?
Yeah, the good thing is that he and I talk, and we have these shared experiences, and so we have a way to, when we start feeling a certain way, we can call one another and help each other out. Now, I do that with my fellow veterans too, but it's unique when it's your own son, and he went to almost the same place you went, just as you were getting back. So it was a very strange,
I can imagine,
situation. But anyway, very proud of him and his CIB. He doesn't like to talk about it. So
that's the big thing. Once they get started talking, they'll talk. They'll talk their heads off.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I
In
didn't
fact,
talk to anybody for 30 years. I
in fact,
didn't join this. I didn't even go to the VA till 35 years after
yeah,
Nam.
yeah,
I didn't know there were new benefits. I didn't know Agent Orange benefits were available.
yeah. There's some good
Now I'm
stuff out there
100%
for
disabled.
veterans.
Huh?
There's some good stuff out there for veterans now that we
You
just
tell
didn't.
me.
It sucked years ago, but it doesn't suck anymore, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe I'm
No, it
wrong.
doesn't suck anymore. I
Yeah,
like the VA. I'm
yeah,
proud of them. But when I got out, they checked my teeth for 10 minutes and that was it.
yeah,
Discharge.
yeah. Check your blood pressure.
Yeah.
Look at your
Yeah.
teeth. And by the way, my teeth were horrible. We won't get into that.
So were mine.
It took me
Take a
about
look.
yeah, it took me about 2
I don't
years to
have
get
any
them
bottom
back.
teeth.
Wow.
That's for an implant denture.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all that's left down there. I did not take care of my teeth in the Army,
Mm-mm.
and I knew better. Anyway, okay,
Yeah.
so
So
that
anyway,
was
you're back at
77.
school.
I'm back to school. I'm doing very well. I'm having fun. I'm the editor of the school newspaper. And since I'm older and have gone through a lot of bullshit, the people I talk to for stories like faculty, administrators, they can't intimidate me. They can't bark me down. I'll bark right back at them. So according to you, you're not interested in the students' welfare. No, I didn't say, well, you did say so. Well, no, what I meant. So I was a popular editor with the supervisor, with the sponsor of the paper, and the students. And I did that on purpose. I don't know why, but I did it on purpose.
Uh-huh.
And okay, so then I transferred to you were on probation, you were on Dean's Honor List college. And I just wish that music teacher had still been there. I would have killed him.
Maybe
I
it's a
wouldn't
good
kill
thing
him, but
maybe it's a good thing he wasn't there, Jeff.
I didn't even, that didn't really bother me until long, long afterwards.
Yeah.
That thing with him didn't start till about 15 years ago with me. I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah. You clearly have not let go of it yet.
No, I have not.
I understand.
Anyway, my brother during this time, he has a good job. He's successful. He's on drugs. He gives away drugs. So he comes home from the rock clubs at night with these hot little 15, 16-year-olds. But he's so full of drugs, he's impotent. So he just has them sleep with me. I get drunk after work every day, enough to go to sleep, 6-pack of beer. And I'm not going to touch a 14-year-old. Are you fucking crazy? You know?
Right.
So I just got out of, he gave me a place to live and everything I wanted, but I can't survive here. Something will happen. One of those little girls will go tell a lie or something. And, I go to prison. So I got my own place. And I met one of his girlfriends at one of a party he was having later than that. And he came to the party with another girlfriend this is how he gets rid of old girlfriends. He brings in the new girlfriend.
Yeah.
He's an asshole. Yeah. And that's how I met the wife I married 16 months later. My brother's ex-girlfriend, who was a dental assistant and did a lot of work to get me fixed up. But too late. Okay.
Are you still married, by the way?
Yeah, second wife though.
Okay. All right. So yeah,
she just died last Friday.
What?
My first wife just died last Friday in Escondido.
Really?
She was in an MCI. You know what MCI is?
I do not.
Mild cognitive impairment.
Okay.
Home. It's like pre-Alzheimer's, pre-dementia. And I had just reestablished contact with her a month before that, 2 months ago. And we started texting and talking on the phone. She sounded happy as a clam. And she dies in her sleep by Friday with the same massive heart attack that killed her brother, her father, and her grandfather. Runs in the family.
Yeah.
And her niece was the one that notified me.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday morning. Yeah.
How long were you married to her?
10 years.
Okay.
We were
And
married on Valentine's Day, she likes to say, and
yes.
divorced on Veterans Day,
Oh,
both apropos.
yes. Very, very fitting, I would imagine. Did you have kids with her?
I'm sorry?
Did you have children with her?
No.
Okay.
She was a hippie in her younger ages. She had a lot of sex with a lot of men, and she had fibroid tumors in her uterus
Oh,
that they could have operated on and gotten out, but she refused to do it. So she was infertile.
right.
So no. And as it turned out, I'm glad we didn't.
Yeah.
Uh
Well,
okay.
so you meet this girl, your brother's ex-girlfriend,
Yeah.
and you get married. Did you finish school at this point?
Yes. I
Okay.
finished school, uh, not summa cum laude or magna cum laude, just cum laude. Okay.
Okay.
That's like the third one down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I finished college cum laude with a bachelor's degree in journalism and a letter from the dean's department saying, you are still on academic probation.
You
Until
gotta
this
be
department
shitting
has been
me.
informed by the admissions office, you will remain on academic. That.
Even though they conferred your baccalaureate degree on you, they still said that.
Now I keep getting fundraising things from the bastards. I don't want to
Yeah,
pay.
they don't. It's not enough that you paid to go there. Now they want you to give them more money. Ah, who knows?
After I graduated, my wife and I bought a little house. I was still doing part-time jobs. Uh, and I answered a ad in the paper from the local transit authority, the Metropolitan Transit Authority, asking for anyone that's experienced in journalism or public affairs, they to work on a project that was designed to bring rapid transit to Los Angeles County. So I said, what the hell? I'll put on a suit and go down there. 20 minutes after I was down there, I had the job. And I was a lobbyist for what at that time was called the Southern California Rapid Transit System. It was the bus company. And it later became, and we sold. Our job was to sell the concept of Metro Rail to all the 52 cities in the county, to the city itself, to the county, to the state. We were lobbyists. That's what I did
Yeah.
for 3.5, 4 years. And then I went to a private company, hired me as a consultant, and did the same thing for another 3.5, 4 years. And right around 1988, I did that for the 80s. Okay, I did that for the 80s. My marriage was getting shaky. She joined AA, and it made her a different person. It made her a different person. A still very nice person, but not the person I married. So I also had developed ID then, no ED,
Mhm.
erectile dysfunction, but they didn't have meds for it then. They didn't have
The little blue pill.
any blue pills then.
Yeah, yeah.
They had testosterone, which I started on, and hair started to grow to the back of my knees. And no, I can't do this. I can't be
Yeah.
shaving the back of my knees every day. I'm not going to do this. On my nose and stuff. I look like a witch. So I didn't go the testosterone route, as it turns out, a very wise choice.
Yes.
And then once a month in Los Angeles, a biggie big in the United States, biggie big world of politicians, billionaires, corporate CEOs, all that, came to LA, and in one of the meeting rooms of like Arco Oil or Southern California Edison, one of the huge big, auditoriums, they'd come out and it was free to the public, and they gave you, some coffee and a wrapped up sandwich, and you go listen to these guys talk. I went to this one, And it was, who was president in 1988? Reagan?
Reagan was in the 80s.
Clinton?
Reagan or Bush.
Or Bush? It wasn't Bush.
Yeah, must have been Reagan.
Hold it. Where's my brain?
I'm no historian.
I am. Up to middle school anyway.
Right? I remember that. You liked history.
Who was president in 1988? Reagan was president.
There you go.
And
For anybody listening to this right now, if you're not watching the video, Jeff just pulled out his phone and asked his phone who the president was. That's where we're at today.
Yeah,
Anyway, so 1988, Reagan's president, and you're drinking coffee, eating a sandwich.
Yeah. And he sent his Secretary of Education. He was the speaker for that day. And he gave a very, very profound speak. And it really registered with a lot of people. And basically what he said to us, hotshot, high-paid consultants and CEOs and executives, was lock your door to your office tonight and don't come back. And tomorrow morning, you walk into a public school and you start teaching. And I did.
Wow. How'd you like it?
I had to join the school district and go through the test and everything.
I get that.
I must have liked it. I stayed in it for the next 25 years.
Yeah. What grades did you teach?
I taught from 1989 to 2009 in the Los Angeles Unified School District. And I taught from 2014 to 2019. I was a professor of English at a technical college in Thailand.
Wow. Well, tell me about the first day walking into a classroom teaching. Were you teaching high school or middle school or grade school?
This was middle school.
Okay.
Middle school.
Okay. So yeah.
My temporary credential was only good for secondary, middle school, high school.
Okay.
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 So they tore me a new asshole.
Yeah.
They did. These 12, 13-year-olds.
They're good at it too, aren't they?
Yeah.
I substitute teach.
Oh.
So I
my hat is off to you, amigo.
I love it. I love those kids. They are not
I love them now too.
They are not fun, but I love them. Anyway, so yeah, so they ripped you up, didn't they?
I can walk into any high school, junior high classroom and have that class eating out of my hands in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because first I make them afraid that I'll hit them. I convince them I will. And that takes care of the boys. And then I start flattering the girls, and that takes care of the girls. I don't physically hit them. I just intimidate them. I just stand next to them, glaring down at them, and it works.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think you have to threaten kids. They know.
Yeah, they know.
At some level, they know you're not going to hit them, but they just don't know for sure.
That's right. That's right. For weeks and weeks this went on. And one day my wife said to me, dear Ruthie, who passed away this week, she said, you know what your trouble is, Jeff? I said, no, what? She said, you look like a businessman who made a wrong turn and walked into a classroom instead of an office. Because I was still wearing my business suit, the vest, three-piece suit and ties. He said, tomorrow going to work with jeans and your dress shirts, no tie, and roll up your sleeves. And it changed like that. The kids just went into this, oh, he's a real teacher mode.
Yeah.
Like that, in one day. Like a Twilight Zone. That's why I kept teaching. I had that problem solved.
And then you could get down to the business of actually educating kids, which is the coolest damn thing on the planet, by the way.
They soak it up like a sponge. You can't teach them enough. It bothers me that sometimes I cannot teach them enough.
Right.
There's so much detail, especially in history. There's so much nuance, especially in writing and literature. And they have the capacity to accept it. They have the capacity to get it, but not in their life. Their life doesn't allow it to happen that way. Till they're about 11th graders. Then I make progress.
Yeah.
But Junior high school is daycare, as far as I'm concerned.
I can definitely feel that way. Sometimes my daughter is actually a full-time teacher in a small school district here in Michigan. So yeah, she's God bless her. That's what she always wanted to do. So she did it. But it sounds like you were very successful at it. Like you found this thing and it really worked for you because you did it for a long time.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I had fun with the kids.
Well, in the
I
midst
did
of all
stuff
of,
that, I'm sorry?
oh no, go ahead.
Every class to me, every day I walked into a classroom, I spent the time going to school thinking of a gimmick to pull on them and who I was going to pull it on. By the time the bell rang and they came in, I had my opening strategy ready. And in the first 10 minutes, sometime in the first 10 minutes of class, I'd launch it. And it was usually a joke. Sometimes it's at their expense, but they laughed at that too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It showed them that you were a human too, right?
I became very popular with the principal of the first school that gave me a full-time job. For the first 3 years, I had an emergency permit. Okay. I was going to school to become a teacher. Had to get another degree, had to get another credential. Okay. I was on a temporary credential. And the last junior high school I worked at, the teacher really liked me. And I really liked her, the principal. And we're still lifelong friends. And she brought me to her school, which happened to be the junior high school I attended as a child. Wow. My junior high school. Before I stepped into that school, the first day of working, I knew where every bathroom was, where every stairwell was, where every bush was, where every trash can was, where all the places to hide and smoke are. Stayed there for 5 years. Then she got a high school and she brought me with her. And that was the other 15 years, the next 15 years.
Yeah. You ever find yourself telling the kids at some point, like, you know, whatever you are thinking about doing right now, I've thought about it and done it
twice.
and they look at you like, what? And like, yeah, I know what you're about to do, and just don't do it because it's not going to turn out well.
That's exactly mine. I know what you're thinking. I know what you want to do, and I've done it already twice.
Yes, learn from my experience, please.
They don't. They won't.
Right. Well, in the midst of all of this, you got divorced and you got remarried, right? Tell me a little bit about that.
The next chapter of my book, Jeffrey joins the transsexual world. I'm sorry. Were you waiting for something?
Okay. You can't just stop there, sir. You have to keep talking. Tell me about this.
Okay. While I was a consultant in the 80s, hold on. I have to get my years right. When did I? 90? I'm blanking on the exact years. I'll tell you without dates, okay?
Yeah, that's fine. We don't have to have dates. Just kind of be general.
Okay. I stopped at my favorite bars 4 days out of the week because I was living alone. I was single from the time I divorced my first wife to the time I married my second wife. I was single for about 20-something years.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so I got very I got very friendly with one of the servers there. Okay. She was just a little different than the rest of them and more friendly, and she'd tell me her personal problems and everything. And about 2 years into that relationship, it struck me why she is the way she is. Because never in a million years could you tell by looking at her that she was a he. And that kind of threw me for a loop. And while my head was spinning from that, there are several doctors. Let me back up. There is a big medical tourism business in Thailand.
Yes.
Huge. These doctors all come to America and are trained at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and they come back to practice in Thailand. But you pay a dime on the dollar in Thailand for what they know, what their training is, okay? This is the biggest deal in town. Anyway, she had found a doctor who does SRS, sexual reassignment surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I can't. Um, uh, anyway, she was saving the money. She had made an open appointment with a surgeon there to have the operation done. But you cannot go there alone. You have to have a companion because the second week you're there while you're in recuperation, you're living in a hotel room and you can't be there alone. You have to have someone with you, a member of your family, somebody, a friend. And she could not find anybody to go with her. And I volunteered.
So that's how you ended up in Thailand.
Yes.
Teaching. Okay.
First time.
Okay.
No, I ended up teaching in Thailand because of my wife.
Okay.
Not
all right.
because of this girl. Okay.
I'm not gonna get ahead of myself.
So I saved enough money. I was kind of well-to-do at the time. My father had passed away and left me a nice bequest. And so I chipped in to the amount she was short for airfare. Mm-hmm. And I paid for my airfare. And we went there to the doctor's town. And, you know, there were lots of old American men there. It was the freakiest thing you ever saw in your life. Lots of 60, 70-year-old men who were there to become women. Wow. Hundreds.
Wow.
And Brits and French and Australians. Right. This guy was the best. While we were there, each patient was assigned a patient liaison member from the doctor's clinic, a staff member that would check vital signs a couple times a day before and after surgery. I would report back to the doctor what they saw, what they thought the condition was. There was a part where the patient liaison had to train and observe the patient using a set of crystal dildo so that certain new orifices didn't close up, grow together.
Right.
And the girl that came to us that was assigned to my friend, her name was Nong. And she was a sweetheart and a half. Her smile was this wide and still is. And she was funny and she was smart. And my friend had 2 more days to stay there, but she was healing so well that nobody made me stay with her. She didn't need a companion anymore.
Yeah.
So I left 2 days before they released her to come home. And that day, Nong came over to do a check on her. Okay. We run over daily checks. And she checks her and she texts her and they do their little thing. And I tell her I'm leaving today, blah, blah, and she hugged me and she leaves the room. And as soon as that door closes, I turned to my friend and said, I'm going to marry that girl. 18 months later, I did.
Wow. That's quite a way to get to that point.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she had a 4.5-year-old son.
Uh-huh.
That was a little jerk, but growed up to be a great man, young man.
So I'm guessing he's there at the house now.
Somebody is. It's either him or the cats.
Yeah.
Oh, he just came back for lunch. He's at work now. Oh, okay. God. Okay.
We've been talking for a little while here.
Yeah, we have.
So you got married. She had a son. Did you have any other children with her?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Okay.
For a variety of reasons, mostly medical reasons.
Uh-huh.
And her age was another reason. And it was at this time, 10 years before that, I had learned about the birth defects caused by Agent Orange. And I went out of my way, even made up medical conditions to avoid it. Because I have a terrifying fear that a child sired by me would have a birth defect, as thousands of men have discovered, veterans of
Yeah.
Vietnam have discovered.
Okay. Well, and that makes sense. So how was teaching in Thailand? What was that like for you?
Okay, insert something here. The reason we
Yes.
went to Thailand, my wife spent her first 6 months in LA with me, and it was too cold for her. She couldn't survive in LA. She said, I hear if we move north, there's a lot of Thai people.
Uh-huh.
And they say the weather's fine. So I had a rental house in Davis, California. UC Davis up there north of
Yeah.
Oakland, San Francisco. And so I kicked the students out there when we moved in there. And the first winter came and she was too cold. Okay. So I moved to Florida. It wasn't too cold there. But all these moves had killed my finances and could not afford for too long the house we got in Florida. I had bought a brand new house when we got married in Thailand. So we moved back to Thailand.
Uh-huh.
And it was during that stay there that I got hooked up with this teaching job at this college there.
Okay.
My students, have you ever seen Asian female college students?
I mean, I live right by Michigan State, so yeah, I do. I see them all the
You
time.
see what they wear?
Yes.
I had 20 to 30 of those 4 hours a day for 5 years. It was heaven.
Yeah.
It was heaven on all counts. They cried an ocean of tears when I left. I still get emails and Christmas cards saying, please come back. They're not even in school anymore.
Right.
But I loved them and the few boys that were there, and they loved me. And the owner of the school loved me. But I had been away from America long enough. Mm-hmm. That was my limit. As much fun as I was having, I was tired of living in a land where I don't speak the language. I'm partially deaf, and Thai is a tonal language. And if you can't hear the little nuances between you can't understand the words, and I cannot hear them. So I was not having fun living in Thailand.
Right.
So we came back in January of 19, spent 6 months looking for a house, bought this house here in Lake Worth. And retired.
And then COVID hit, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then COVID hit. And we went into lockdown. Mm-hmm. And I did not handle lockdown very well. Well, I'll take that back. Physically, I handled it very well. I did everything exactly right that they told us to do. Everything. Okay. And in the process became an antisocial hermit and a Trump hater.
Yeah.
And I still live with those results of being a hermit. I have no friends. I go to no social activities. I go with my wife to her Thai temple Buddhist here once a week. That's more of a social thing than a religious thing.
Right.
I'm just waiting to die. I didn't think I'd live this long. I've been waiting to die since 1971. I didn't think I'd make it through now.
Do you think maybe there's something that you're supposed to accomplish?
I think I've done it. I think teaching was it.
Yeah.
When my
Yeah.
father died, he left me $1 million tax-free in cash. I left it in his stock market account and ran it up to 1.78 million. And then I proceeded to spend 3 years giving it away. I gave away every penny. I don't know why I'm crying.
How did you give it away? You just gave it away?
I helped thousands of students who were in hard times, thousands of veterans who were in hard times, thousands of bums who were in hard times, thousands of students' families who were in hard times, dozens of transsexuals who were in hard times. It's all gone. I just live on my income now. I did buy this house and a very nice house in Thailand. Those are my non-liquid assets.
Right. So do you think you'll be going back to Thailand anytime soon to visit?
Too many friends there.
Yeah.
But
You think
not to
that'll-
live for 5 years. Not to live for 5 years.
Right,
Maybe
right.
a year. Maybe a year. It's hot in Thailand. I never saw the thermometer go below 80 in
Yeah.
5 years.
Isn't it humid there as well? Am I wrong? It's like
Florida. It's no different than Florida.
okay. Well, Florida's
to that.
humid to me. Florida's humid.
I
to
don't
me.
even notice the humidity.
Yeah.
Except my car windshield.
Right.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends there and a few other zingers to throw in there. I'm trying to get my son to join the Navy. Academically, he's lost. I mean, he takes the classes, he advances, he matriculates, as we say in the biz, but he has no focus. He's just like I was. And I'm going to get him in the Navy. For what's the basic, a 4-year stint?
You could do, okay, it's been a while. So I actually served in the Navy before I served in the Army. And at that time you could do a 2-year.
No, I don't think
2-year stint.
Anymore.
Well, I would check. And the reason I say that is because right now recruiting's struggling to hit their numbers. And so they will come up with these programs. And a lot of times they'll have like a 2-year program where you can go in for 2 years non-designated. So they don't guarantee you a job. You just go in.
I don't want him in for 2 years. I want him in for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Well, and there's those as well. But definitely talk to a recruiter. But, I think the Navy is what saved me from going nowhere because that's where I was headed. And thankfully,
so did the Army. Saved me from going nowhere.
Yeah.
In a way.
Well, and if I think about it, I left the Navy and went to work in the utility industry, but I missed the military, so I joined the Army National Guard here in Michigan, and that had a whole bunch of other things that helped me out with my life. It had a lot of consequences that I don't appreciate, PTSD and mental issues and suicide attempts and things like that. But overall, my time in service made me who I am right now. And so I can't say it was a bad decision, but there were a lot of things that happened.
It saved your life.
It did. It did.
As we say in Buddhism, sadhu. I just blessed you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So are you a practicing Buddhist then?
I'm a Buddhist now.
Okay.
Because they don't have a God. They just have a teacher. His name's Buddha.
Right.
There's no God.
It's very calming too, isn't it? I mean, it can help with a lot of things.
If you could get yourself to meditate just 10 minutes every day, even if you couldn't get into it in that 10 minutes, your clock ran out on you. If you try to meditate just 10 minutes every single day, you will be a new person at some point down the line. You will be enlightened about yourself, about your family, and about others. You will have no more hate. You will have no fears. You you're possible people make you mad. I'm not there yet. Believe me.
Right. You know, the interesting thing about meditation to me is that I had this idea of what meditation was,
That's the big problem in America.
but meditation is really the it's like the movie Fight Club, right? The first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. When you're meditating, you're not thinking about, at least the meditation that I've done, you're not thinking about anything. That's the purpose, is to not think and process and do all these things. The purpose is to get in touch with yourself, and to clear your mind, and to pop those bubbles of thoughts and into, yeah. So there's this whole thing about, oh well, I'm meditating, so I've got to think about something and I got to do this. No, you clear your,
That's the exact opposite of what
yes,
meditation is.
yes, and it's so hard. Once you figure it out, it's great, but it's so hard at first to like do that. Like, oh, here comes a thought, push it, let it drift through and go away. Let it drift through and go away. But so often I would catch myself like grabbing onto that thought and running with it, and then realizing that's not what I'm supposed to be. I wouldn't even say not what I'm supposed to be doing. That's not
Yeah.
going to be helpful in my meditative journey.
Well,
So
you should put a finger in your belly button. Just put a finger in your belly button.
okay.
Right behind there is a sphere. It's a highly charged crystal sphere. And when it's cooking, the sparks, it makes like flame from a fire.
Mhm.
That's all you want to see when you meditate. That and nothing else. And the second your brain starts to go someplace else, drag it back.
Yeah.
Until the alarm goes ding. And then do it the next day. Find that ball.
Mm-hmm.
And you will be enlightened. And you'll wonder how it happened so easy.
Do you think that that's going to help you? I mean, you said something that is kind of stuck in my head, that you're just kind of waiting to die. Do you think that that's going to help you get out of that state of mind?
Yes, I do.
Because you're not that old. I've got relatives that are a lot older than you, and they're not waiting to die. And so, yeah, I was just wondering if you think that's going to help you get out of that state of mind.
I don't doubt it.
Do you want to be
too many people?
Yeah, you want to get out of that state of mind?
I want to stop wanting to kill.
Yeah.
I just have this imaginary hit list of people who, if I saw today, they walked in this room, I don't know what I'd do. For some of them, I just reached for this letter opener and put it through their throat. I wouldn't have to think a thought. Others, why bother? Why bother?
Right.
Anyway, yes,
Yeah.
I recommend it.
Okay. All right. Well, we've talked about a lot of stuff. We've actually been talking for almost 2.5 hours, which it doesn't even seem like that long, to be honest with you, Jeff. But I think as we kind of wrap up our conversation today, I've learned a lot about you, and it's been a great conversation. But before we go, I always ask the same question. And the question is, when you and I are gone, because someday we will be, what is it that you want people to take away from your life and from our conversation today?
It's a phrase that's been used by the world for 10,000 years, but it's also a lyric in a Steppenwolf song. And it says, it's never too late to start all over again.
I think you're absolutely right. By the way, I used to listen to Steppenwolf Gold. It was a great album. Had all their good stuff on it. Anyway, well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Thank you,
that.
Bill.
Never too
Good
late
luck
to
for
start
me.
over again. What's that?
It did a lot for me.
I'm glad. I'm glad that helped. That's one of the reasons we do this.
To listen to this full story or to hear the stories of other veterans, go to www.veteransarchives.org and click on the Media tab.